Me in the studio and bring me out?
We
Oh,
are
never
live
mind.
now. All
I didn't
right.
know.
Peace and love, family. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, like and subscribe. And I'm your host, Queen Samara of Astral Healing Arts. And we are here today with my beloved sister, the Empress of Global Green Book Channel. This is my sister. We go back many years. And she is I call her a global green book trekker. She travels a lot and she can offer us some insight onto traveling. And particularly, we're going to be talking about the repatriation process, which is something that she promotes a lot on her channel and in the work that she does. So, welcome, Empress. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah. I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for having me on your channel.
Thank you
Um,
for taking time between all your travels and joining us. So, we want to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself.
sure. Greetings, everyone. Great. My name is Empress. My channel is Global Green Book. I am a a global traveler now, I guess. That's my new thing. My background is, I come from the accounting background as well as I have my own podcast, which is called Let's Talk About It with Empress, which is my baby in progress right now, which will be focusing on, all things, black, different
Mhm.
topics that hit our community, as well as I am working on my low content books. I'm also going have a few journals that I'm putting out online, which I will be sharing soon. I have my own YouTube channel. I have two YouTube channels. One is Tie by Kidness with Empress, which is all about health and wellness and just, getting myself Black to Africa ready, because I have had some struggle as a vegetarian who has some weight issues
Mhm.
from different reasons. And I have my Global Green Book channel, which is my new channel, it's been my main focus, which I started to really document my whole thought process behind repatriation, my ups, my downs, my goals that I've achieved, and just to share it with other people who may be going through it as well,
Mhm.
especially as a single female, because when I first was started considering my repatriation goal, there was not anyone really, it wasn't that many people you could find that was interested in repatriation, which was like over 20 plus years. And now, as an empty nester, I was like, talk to my children. They're like, the time is now. And I wanted to leave something, for them as well as helping my community out.
Yes.
And hoping I can motivate others. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful for sharing it. Now tell me the name of your podcast again, because I'm gonna put it in the comment section.
It's called Let's Talk About yeah, dot 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 with Empress. The W forward slash Empress. So let's talk about with Empress. So it just it might be let's talk about repatriation. Let's talk about money, whatever it
Mhm.
is with Empress.
And where
And
can they find that podcast?
you can find it across your different podcast platforms. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, different podcast streaming platforms. I'm trying to remember some of the other. It's there's so many different podcast platforms, but if you type in the name, you should be able to find me.
Okay, okay.
I'm across like 5 or 6 different podcast platforms.
Oh, awesome. That's wonderful.
Hmm.
Okay. So, what motivated you? I know you said that in the beginning when you started exploring the repatriation process, there weren't a lot of other people, I guess, that were focusing on it. So, what motivated you to think about the repatriation process?
Well, yeah, are you talking about most recently or when I like
Yeah. Well, first
most?
let's define what's repatriate, because some people may hear that term and don't know what it means. So what is repatriate?
Repatriation is to return back to the motherland,
Mm-hmm.
to your motherland. So for most African Americans, I'm speaking about African Americans, a lot of diasporans actually, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking as far as African American. Our motherland is Africa, so
Okay.
it's to return back to your mother country and to return home.
Okay.
So it's to repatriate.
Okay. So what motivated you to repatriate?
Well, I guess I would have to start when the seed was first planted in
Mm-hmm.
my spirit.
Yes.
Uh, you know, the seed was actually first first planted in my spirit as a child. Uh, Hearing stories about from my mother talking
Mm-hmm.
about her dad, who is from Senegal,
Mm-hmm.
and prior to, when during the time when I was growing up, you just never heard about Africa, and anything you heard about Africa, you didn't want to be associated with.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, hearing my mother talk about her African father conflicted with what I was seeing visually on TV. And as a youth, I was blessed to see Bob Marley while he was still walking this earth. And
Oh
so,
wow.
yeah, because he was on TV when I was a kid, and I just remember my mom always saying, "Oh, that's such a handsome young man," and I used to
Mm-hmm.
look like, right? Because
Uh-huh.
I'm a kid, so I was first introduced to even the the reggae music as a child, and
Mm-hmm.
Bob was always talking about returning
Yes.
back to the motherland,
Mm-hmm.
and so with the combination of my mom talking about her dad. And then and hearing, seeing this man on TV who looked very alien like to me was my first introduction, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I have to say, like in elementary school.
Okay.
So fast forward, that's when the seed was first planted, where
Mm-hmm.
I was conflicted with watching like Tarzan and those things.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, as a young mother, I had the blessing of being introduced to a very diverse community within my own household growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So as a young mother, I almost kind of carried on the tradition, and I started being introduced to the Rasta community in DC.
Mm-hmm.
And within that community, I was introduced to the Ethiopian community as well. I then befriended and married Ethiopian and started learning a lot more about His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile
Mm-hmm.
Selassie, and just the Go Back to Africa movement, which
Yes.
was for me began in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that time, trotting Rastafari, all we
Good
talked about
thanks.
was going to
Yeah.
Africa and,
Mm-hmm.
going, seeing His Majesty's homeland. And
Mm-hmm.
burning down Babylon,
Yeah.
so to speak, and not in a literal sense, because some people like, oh my God, they want to burn down our. No, not in the literal sense, but just like the Babylon mindset. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's
I
okay.
just finished eating breakfast. But the Babylon mindset. So I was trying Rastafari, chanting down Babylon, talking about going back to Africa, and that's when I really started taking a good look at going back to Africa. And the first step for me was to visit Africa. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, I was very tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
Visiting Africa was not the 54 countries that we know it is. My
Yeah.
visiting to me, Africa was Ethiopia,
Yep.
because I was like Cabalon. How you say it? the original name for Africa. What was it?
Al Kebalon, that's one of the names. Yeah.
Kibelon. Thank you, because
Hmm.
that's what English is not my first language. It was stolen from me, so help me out sometimes. But that was our focus. So we were looking at all of Africa as Ethiopia in the Rasta
Hmm.
community.
Hmm.
So
Whole
I was like, I
community.
need to get back to Ethiopia. I need to get back to Ethiopia, Ethiopia. So that was in my head, and the first step for me was to visit. And I knew people there. I knew elders were there, and I just knew of the struggle and challenges. And you know, um, you didn't hear about YouTubers or
Hmm.
these different movements and travel groups going to Africa. You just didn't
Hmm.
hear. You heard about Caribbean and Mexico and Europe, but not to Africa.
Yes. Hmm.
And anytime I talked about going to Africa, I got a lot of opposition, which was really interesting. But even from my family, they was like, "Why do you want to go there?" Because it's almost kind of like our grandfather came here for a reason. Why you want to go
Right.
back? So um that was my focus. I wanted to get to Ethiopia, and I wanted to get my children there. And then it was even more important for me because not only did I have that connection with the Rasta community, my children literally had family in Ethiopia because I had a child with an Ethiopian man. So
Hmm.
it was very important for me to bring them over there, not only for the Rasta tradition, but also to meet their actual family members in
Right.
Ethiopia. So I was like, at this time, I said, I did not want to raise my children in Babylon. To me,
Hmm.
Babylon was a wicked system. I dealt with so many atrocities in my own lifetime here
Yes.
in the States because, I love my country. I love America, but America doesn't love me and mine. And it has shown that, through his history, because I was part of, medical apartheid. A lot of us have been part of a
Hmm.
medical apartheid as blacks in America, and I did not want my children to deal with that. And I saw the family value that the Ethiopian community at that time, because I was very ingrained not only in the Rasta community, but in the Ethiopian community per se, because I did have friends who were Ethiopian. I did have children with an Ethiopian family. So I was very ingrained in their community. And I just saw the difference in the values of our children who got caught up in the system here versus their children who they were sending home regularly, living and being educated over there, and just how well educated they were, where they came over here and was getting 2, 3, 4 degrees, and
Hmm.
we're barely speaking one language. And it's my grandfather spoke 6 different languages,
Wow.
where we're very we barely speak one language. We don't even
Hmm.
speak English well. So I was like really on this mission to get my
Hmm.
children to Africa, but I
Okay.
didn't know how. I just knew that was my goal because I
Hmm.
wanted them to see that family value. I wanted to experience that because during that time I was also recently had lost my mother.
Hmm.
I became estranged from my father because he remarried a woman who quite didn't like me and my family,
Okay.
and so I was pretty much out here on my own. So I didn't have that family connection that I would hope for, even having a large family of like siblings. America have a tendency to split everyone,
Hmm.
where you're not helping. Everyone's trying to figure out taking care of them, theirs and themselves. So when I went to Ethiopia, and I did everything I could to get there. I sold my car. I moved out of my house. I got rid of
Uh-huh.
my house. I went from a house to a 2 bedroom apartment. If you remember at that time,
Yes.
uh, I started selling my possessions. I was like, I needed to get my children there. And at that time, tickets going to Ethiopia probably cost about the same amount as they do now, 20 years later. I mean,
Okay.
they were like per person in 2006, they were like 1,400 each. So I had to pay
Mhm.
1,400 for me, 1,400 for my daughters, both my daughters. So that was not a cheap trip. Then I was staying for an entire month.
Mhm.
So now I had to pay for my housing situation here, and I had to pay
Mhm.
for my housing there because I wanted to go to Ethiopia and see what the opportunities were.
Right.
If I could get a job, or what was the living situation, the money. I wanted
Mhm.
to go and just kind of see how it would be for me to move with my children there. And like I said, there
Okay.
was no resources outside of
Mhm.
people talking, and if
Mhm.
you go through this, you'll see how poorly people communicate, because it was really hard to get
Mhm.
good
Now,
information.
quick question: was Ethiopia the first country on the continent that you visited?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Because I know you've traveled quite a bit, so that was the first. Now,
Yeah.
um, you mentioned no resources because I know there are communities popping up here and there. Maybe they're new. Um, what having social media has made me more aware of them. I'm not sure. Some are new, some are old, but there are communities popping up now of diasporans that have made the repatriation journey. Have you visited any of those communities in your travels?
Uh, in Ethiopia, I did not.
Okay.
Um, and that's only because at that time I didn't know about them. I was not aware of it. Like now, yeah, I'm aware of them, but back then when my children were small, 'cause they're all adults now, I just didn't know of any, and
Mhm.
I only had the Ethiopian community to reach out to at that time, and the Rasta community. And
Mhm.
it was unfortunate, like in Ethiopia, like the where the Rasta community was in Ethiopia, it was nowhere near where I was staying in Ethiopia. And when I had went to Ethiopia, it was during the time when we had the stock market crash. So
Mhm. I remember that.
not only did when I went to Ethiopia, I had already bought our tickets prior, and then all of a sudden the stock market crashed. I lost my job. My job that I did had didn't pay me for like 4 months because I was working in the mortgage industry, and
Hmm.
a lot of the mortgage companies were
Yes.
not receiving their funds. So my company could not pay me, so they had owed me like I don't know, like 5 months of income.
Okay.
So I was basically living off of my savings account, which I'm so grateful I had a savings account. And so when I had went to Ethiopia, I only went with like I think $400
Mm.
for a whole month. And so my travel when I went there was strictly left limited to where I was staying at. So I was living like a local. And
Hmm.
so I had to budget my money for the month. And it was fine, because
Hmm.
we ate 3 square meals. We were able to travel around the city. We went out to
Hmm.
dinner. We did things because it was so inexpensive. But to do like traveling around the countryside, it was not in my budget. So I
Okay.
did not get to connect
Hmm.
with the people who I knew,
Hmm.
with the Rasta community. I was not able to connect with them because most of them were in the northern region of in a place called Shashamani.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
I've heard of that region. So, can you share with the listener audience what are some of the countries that you visited? I know Ethiopia was the first one, but what are some of the names of the other countries you visited?
In Africa, I have been to Ghana.
Okay.
I have been to the Gambia,
Hmm.
and I have been to Morocco.
Okay. And out of those countries, which one would you suggest, or could you recommend one for people who melanated people who are interested in repatriating, which one would you recommend?
Well, it's hard to say. I can't say I recommend one country over another because they
Okay.
all offer something different. So it all depends on what you're looking for. Because each country was very unique. Because
Mhm.
if you're looking for an English speaking country,
Yes.
Ghana and the Gambia are definitely a place to go, right? Because they're both
Mhm.
English speaking. If you're looking for a more developed country, Morocco and, Ethiopia, very developed. If you're looking for a country that has a spectrum of landscaping and good weather, I would say Ghana. It all depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something that's real slow pace, low key, Gambia. If you're looking for being able to be part of the developmental stages of a country, the Gambia. So it all depends. If you want a job, I would say Morocco, because Morocco, I could see people going there and finding a place, a job to work at. You
Oh, okay.
know,
Okay.
yeah. If you're looking to start a business, I would say the Gambia because it's Gambia, Morocco, because Morocco makes it very easy for people to start a business. The Gambia, they need businesses, so it all depends on what you're looking for.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. That's
hmm
helpful. Because I think, don't you do consulting with that, with helping people and
Yeah, I'm starting to. Yes.
consult? Okay, good, good. Um,
hmm
what are some of the benefits of repatriating for melanated people?
There's several benefits to it. If you want to talk about your mental health, it's an opportunity to be able to really slow down and focus on yourself. Get into your healing process because Africa
Mhm.
is at a pace where when you're in the States, they don't call it a rat race for no reason. The
Mhm.
Matrix for not a reason. Because here, like you see, I'm sitting in my car because I'm doing this in between working, right?
Right.
Because I get up in the morning at 5 a.m. I go to work. I After I get off my 5 a.m. job, then I go to my 9 a.m. job, and then when I get off my 9 a.m. job, then I got stuff I do at night. So we're constantly moving here,
Mhm.
you know. It's it's really sometimes you don't even get a chance to even check your environment, what's going on, the flowers, or say hi to your neighbor. It's sometimes you don't even get to speak, you don't even know your neighbor's name. So a lot of times, a lot of us let our mental health, our physical health kind of slip by us. I'm not going to say we just flat
Mhm.
out ignore it, but it's like sometimes you just don't have time to address it, because you got to take off of work. It's just like
Mhm.
the way our system is set up here. It's not set up here for wellness.
Mm.
Um, it's not set up for wellness because this is a country that was built on slave labor, and so that kind of mentality is still the same because people. You hear all the time people work, work, work here, and then will retire. And when they retire, shortly afterwards, they pass
They
away.
pass away. Yeah.
That's how this system is set up. A lot of people don't want to take that reality, but that's the reality. This is a country built on that kind of labor force.
Mhm.
Where in Africa, it's like it's almost like people here take on the mindset they live to work, but in Africa it's more of like they work to live. So, you
Mhm.
know, um, when even if you're late for something, it's
Mhm.
like they take the time out. How are you? How
Yeah.
are you doing? How is your family? How are you doing? It's like people over there actually, even if it's just pleasantries, it's it's a pleasantry that's nice because you're like, oh wow, you're interested in how I'm doing and how
Mhm.
I'm feeling and what's going on today. And sometimes when you're trying to get things done, you have to sit down and you're forced to slow down. You may not be able to get your full agenda
Mhm.
done in a day. You
Mhm.
might have have the rest of the day to sit back and do nothing, and then the next day to do whatever is on your list of things to do. So Africa kind of forces you to slow down, especially depending on what part of Africa you go, because some countries are slower than others. But it's not the fast pace that you feel here in America, where a lot of times you don't even, you might even forget to put your own head on here, if
Mm,
it wasn't attached, where there you're like putting your head on, you're looking at your neighbors, helping him out, it's like you can really take in your full environment, everyone
mhm,
around you, and address yourself, and it's so refreshing because it's the recharge that you can't get here. Like
mhm,
even like traveling, how we travel here when we're going from state to state. You're getting in a car and you're like driving for hours, and then you stop, you gas, and you jump back in and you go, and you might grab something eating on. Like in Africa, you ain't traveling like that.
mm,
Like if you stop for gas, you're going to be forced to sit down, wait for your, it's like they
mhm.
make you sit down and be still. It's a
Yeah.
really it's an energy recharge that I think everyone needs, and then you can really get into self-reflection, meditation, things that you normally probably was like, I don't have time for this, but there you have the time to do all that,
Mhm,
those wellness practices to help your
mhm.
mental, your mind, your spirit, even with like the way you eat. Versus here, we have so much GMO now. Like even our vegetables are questionable here.
Okay.
So whether you're eating good, holistic food here versus Africa is still not a comparison, because
Yes.
there you actually have natural, organic
Mhm.
food grown from the ground. They're trying to change it because I'm seeing the Western influence. They're trying to bring their perfect fake food into Africa,
Okay.
which is, I pray the Africans, do not allow it. But, where you're getting more natural food, like pineapples are sweet versus here they're bitter, and
Mhm,
it's just like, you even when you bite into something over there, it's just so incredible. You can feel your body being quenched. So with
mhm,
that being said, even when you're eating here, I eat a vegetarian diet, but I'm like, I need breakfast, I need lunch, I get hungry because the food is not quenching my body. But there
mhm,
I notice I eat less because the food is actually nourishing and quenching my body, where I don't need as much food to sustain myself. So then you naturally end up losing weight, because if you notice, when people go to Africa and they come back, they lost weight, they look good, their
mhm,
skin, because the lifestyle itself is conducive to wellness and mental health. And versus here, a lot of things is put in place to keep us sick, because in the West, the only thing we really create is the pharmaceutical companies, and
mhm,
the health industry. That's a money maker for the West, where it doesn't suit them to keep people healthy, because then
mhm,
they can't make their money.
mhm.
So I see a big difference in that as well.
Yes. Yeah, I have noticed, in fact, what you mentioned about the weight and the food, um, being more nourishing, because when I have traveled out of the country, I did eat less. I wasn't as hungry. I felt more satisfied after meals. And I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm traveling and sightseeing so much. I just, wasn't thinking about food, but I just didn't have the same appetite. And then I have noticed several people when they travel overseas, even if it's just for a tour, they'll come back, you know, smaller, and
Hmm.
lost weight. And then I know a family who lived 6 months in Senegal came back. and they had lost weight. There's, they just looked different, and they said the same thing. They ate less, they were less hungry, they didn't have any stress. And it seems like, I'm sure there's stressors everywhere, but it seems like this the West is very stressful on people,
It is.
emotionally and physically. And then when they go outside the country, it's like, it's like a reprieve, and it just relieve a lot of that stress. And then another thing that you mentioned was the travel is easier abroad. And we live here in the DMV, and every time there is a holiday, traffic is just overwhelming. And even the day before, and then the day before the holiday, it's still traffic, because people are leaving earlier to try to beat the traffic. But then there's so many people trying to do that. And every time there's a special holiday, and the day before, and sometimes 2 days before, I don't care what time you leave your home, you're going to run into traffic. And the same thing with the airport. The airports are always overcrowded. The lines are so long. And it's just like, it's just a constant, like, just overwhelming sensation.
Well, don't get me wrong. There's traffic in Africa too.
Okay.
There's traffic and things of that nature too. Like like crazy traffic. Like when
Mhm,
I was in Ghana, it was like crazy traffic. But
mhm,
the difference, what I found when I was there with the people there versus here, we can be in that crazy traffic and your job,
mhm,
um, appointments, everybody expect you to still be on time. Like if
mhm,
I leave here and I know I can get to my job by 8:30, but I run into some traffic and I get there at 9:05 and I'm supposed to be there at 9, you can get penalized and get fired, and they don't care how much traffic it is. So that's
mhm,
stressful on your psyche.
mhm.
Where in Africa, if you're an hour late, you get there, they was like, like here we'd be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry,
It's
I'm
more
so late.
laid
Oh my
back.
god, oh my god. But there they're like, hello everybody, it was traffic. I'm sorry, I'm late, but I'm here now. You see the difference?
Mhm. Yeah.
Nobody, and then everybody's will say, they say, oh, it's Africa.
Okay. Yeah, the places
So
that
it's
I've visited
it's traffic there, but the reaction is different.
different.
Like people don't expect you to be on time, and like for me, I had like a love hate with that because I was just like, oh, you need to respect my time. You need to respect my time because I'm still American.
Mhm.
I fall into that sometimes, but then I was like, you're in Africa. They do things differently, and it forced me to calm my heart down
Mhm.
because we make ourselves sick here by
Mhm.
stressing about these things, and they don't stress about it. They were just like,
Right.
look, I'm here.
Mhm.
I made it safely. So like that's the difference. So even though there's traffic there too, but the reaction is
It's
different.
different. Okay, good answer. Okay. So, what do you the countries that you visited, if someone's watching this and they're interested in repatriating, and this is just, something that they're, listening to help give them some insight on it, what expectations should they have, or should they have any, about repatriating?
I wouldn't have any expectations because
Okay.
um it's almost kind of like think about like here in the United States. Imagine if it was like United States of Africa.
Mhm.
Each country is very different than the next one.
Yeah.
So you may move someplace and realize it's just not for you, but
Mhm.
there's another country you can go to. So like I said, I wouldn't have any expectations. I would definitely not compare it to the West because then you'll be very disappointed in that, because Africa is very unique. It's not like any other place on the planet.
Mhm.
And if you go there with expecting to find a Western lifestyle, I'd say don't go.
Mhm.
Don't go. If you're expecting to have a better lifestyle for what your
Mhm.
needs are, for me, is stress, it's wellness.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. If you're expecting the same, what's the word? I can't think of the word right now, but like here checks and balances. You expect the
Yes.
same checks. If you expect the same checks and balances that we have here in the West, you will be highly disappointed because there's a lot of things that still need to be addressed in Africa because you still have colonizers who are
Hmm.
influencing those in power and keeping that keep themselves um,
Hmm.
in control of African resources. So
Hmm.
there's going to be a lot of things in place that you may not necessarily like,
Hmm.
especially with the government, um, certain agencies and things like that, where, like, which was hard for me, that, I expect a certain amount of professionalism, a
Hmm.
certain amount of honesty, and some of that is lacking in some countries, not all countries, but some. Because,
Hmm.
like, I was pleasantly surprised when I was in Morocco. Morocco has a lot of checks and balances,
Hmm. Okay.
you know, with the banking system, and which I understood why they were as developed as they were, because like they don't allow the money in their country to leave out the country. You only
Hmm.
are allowed to send certain amount of money. You have a limit on a cap on what you can send out the country.
Interesting.
You can send as much as you want in, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
but you can't, and I mean like shopping. Like if I want to go shop on Amazon, Amazon is not a Moroccan company, right? It's
Okay.
benefiting what the it's a U.S. company. My limit that I can spend with Amazon, I can't remember the actual limit, but I think it may be like around 1,200
Hmm.
a year. You have about 1,200 a year that you can spend outside of the country, and after that, that cap is done until the next year. So
Interesting.
that way they keeps the money in Morocco.
Hmm.
But Morocco got everything that any other Western country have. If you want to go, if you want an Audi, a BMW, they have those. If you want
Hmm.
McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, they have that. If you want to go shopping at H&M or
Hmm.
Aldo's or Burberry, all those designer places and clothing stores, they have everything. So
Hmm.
it's not like you're really missing out on a lot. But there's, some places that some things they don't have that you may want to shop outside of the country for. They
Hmm.
keep, and that's whether it's shopping, sending money out to loved ones or whatever. They do put a cap on what you can send out of the
Hmm.
country. And that's how they're able to keep their economy flowing, because that money has to be spent within the country. But Morocco also makes it easy for people to come there and start a business. So that's probably why
Hmm.
they have so many of those businesses like Aldo's and H&M's and Crate and Barrels and all that in the country, because those businesses were able to come there and start a business. And even like a small business owner can start a business in Morocco very easy. So it all depends on what you really want. For
Sounds good.
me, I'm looking for a more less developed country,
Hmm.
or a developing. I'm looking for a developing country. I was corrected on
Developing.
that. So someone got on me. They were like, not less developed. It's a developing. I'm like, my bad, my bad. I'm looking, but I'm more interested in a developing country because I want to be part of that process,
Oh,
so
that's
that I can start a business and I can be, I can hire people and be a benefit to the economy. And that has its challenges, because when you're going into countries that are developing, you're dealing with more poverty and maybe more petty crime. So, it depends on what, you're looking for and what you're able to deal with.
hmm that sounds good. Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing this information. And um, are there any websites or resources that you can recommend?
Well, you can check out my channel, Global Green Book.
Yes.
I've been trying to put a lot of information on there as well. Uh, as far as other websites, and I don't know of any per se, but I have been redirected to a few other channels of
Hmm.
people who are traveling. and traveling to a lot. And the one was recently a gentleman by name of Ju Travels, Ju Travel,
Mhm.
and he is creating a travel book because he's traveling to different countries throughout Africa, and he's been to a lot. So I started recently checking him out, and he's giving you like the good and the bad, and some
Mhm.
people don't like it, but for someone who's repatriating, those are the type of channels we need. Someone
Right.
that's going to give us the good and the bad, and and I try to do the same thing. I'm not just going to sit here and paint a pretty picture of something, because that's a setup. If you go somewhere and you're thinking you can, this is going to be a place for you, but you're like, this person didn't tell me this was happening, because you are, it's the good and the bad of every of every country. But that's all I have for right now. And you can check out my
Okay.
podcast, Let's Talk About It with Empress.
Yes.
I'll be
Yeah.
sharing information as well.
Oh,
And as and there and I as I find people who are giving good information, I try to share that also, because there's a lot of resources now.
okay. Good. Good. Good.
Hmm.
All right then. Well, thank you again for sharing with us and being here with us. And
Thank
um,
you for having me.
always, and family, reach out to Empress on her channels and on let's support her podcast. And like I said, she's also starting her own business to help people with the repatriation process with through consulting. So she's somebody definitely you should reach out to and follow if you're interested. So
Oh
peace and
yeah, and
love.
I wanted to
Go
share
ahead.
real quick too. As far as like consulting, I will be doing that more so on my Patreon. So if
Okay.
you go into my Patreon, I haven't really uh I'm getting it, set up, but that's where I will do consulting. I will start putting information. I
Okay.
have to think about my English on that channel as well. So if you check out my Patreon, Global Green Book, I keep it very simple. You can
I'll put
contact
that
me
Global
through
Green Book on Patreon.
Patreon. Yeah, you can contact me through there if you want some consulting. I'm very reasonable. I'm not, if you become a Patreon for $3 a month, I will share as much information I can through my Patreon family. So I'm not trying to like break people's pockets, but it also will support me so that I can get that information and put it together. And because my time is money, I'm gonna be, I have to just be,
Mhm.
be straight about that. But I want to help people as well,
Right.
and yeah, so you can contact me through that way if you want some consulting.
Okay, well, give thanks for that. And so, thank you, everyone. Peace and love. Happy Friday, Juma Mubarak.
Juma
Uh,
Mubarak.
yes, and we'll see you all next time on my channel. And please like and subscribe. Peace and love to you all.
Peace and love. One love.